Hello there, welcome to the channel, and by popular demand, and I mean popular because I get a lot of comments requesting these. We have another faction versus where I take two factions from completely different universes and fight them. This one has been requested, I'll be honest, a couple of times and I forget by who. So I apologize because I couldn't find the comments again to tag you. So let me know in the comments below if this was you that requested it. They're sort of from separate universes, sort of. They're kind of connected. They've also been explored a little bit in comic book form, so I'm going to ignore those because these are mine and I don't care. I've also not read those comics, so screw the comics, I guess. And that is the Yautja, or Yautja, how you want to pronounce it, the Predators basically, versus the Engineers. With that said, welcome to the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know in the comment section down below who you think would win in this versus. Before I've actually got to the end, see if we have the same. Tell me different. Tell me I'm wrong. Whatever. Let me know. And let's get started. So a little background on these two factions. Who do we have? On the one side, we have got the Yautja, the Predators. On the other side, we have the Engineers. Reality check, we actually don't know too much about either faction. We do know that both civilizations have been visiting Earth for quite some time. We know very likely that the Engineers are genetically related to humans because they seem to have had something to do with the seeding of life on Earth. Now, whether or not they actually created life on Earth or whether they encouraged the evolution of humankind on Earth is a question. The reason I say it's a question is when you actually watch Prometheus, there's a couple of things to think about. You see them use the black goo, one of them collapses, his body breaks down into the water, and you see what looks like the building blocks of life. Yes, but you also see that very same engineer breathing the air on the planet. Now we know that microbial life has been on Earth for like 2 billion years, right? But 2 billion years ago, Earth was not like that. And the air, not breathable. It was not oxygen, but the oxygen-nitrogen mix on the planet where we encountered the Engineers was seen to be what they breathed because they had created a controlled environment in their buildings with an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere very similar to Earth. So unless they're capable of breathing different atmospheres, which I cannot confirm is something that is true, because it probably isn't, that means Earth already had this oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, which would imply life had already taken hold, and we just saw like Proto-Niagara Falls or something, and they were like, you know what, we're going to make humans. That's what we're going to make. And we saw the beginnings of primates. I don't know. That's a speculative theory. I think they were meant to seed life, but there's a lot of things that don't make sense. Color of the sky should be purple for a start. Global temperature should be different. The environment should be different. The atmospheric composition would be different. Also, without all the microorganisms in the atmosphere breathing it, also a problem. So, you know, there's a lot of issues. It'd be like you trying to breathe on Mars. You mean technically there's atmosphere. Technically there's even a little bit of oxygen. Not enough. And it's cold. Your lungs going to freeze. You're going to freeze. Forgetting the freezing, you can't breathe it because it's mostly nitrogen. Also, it's very thin. Yes, could you inhale it? Of course. Could you survive on it? No, you'd be dead. And very likely, so would the Engineer, unless he either had something that helped him live, or he could breathe different atmospheres. I'm getting off topic. The Engineers as a whole, the alien bodybuilders, as I've heard them referred to, are very large with marble white skin and black eyes. They are, this is comic book lore, and we see it to a degree in the films as well, physically very imposing. They are incredibly physically powerful beings. Very strong with a very dense muscle structure. They are capable of surviving a very long time in suspended animation. They are highly intelligent and technologically sophisticated with technology that I'm going to say probably rivals that of the Yautja. Maybe not on a tactical level, but certainly when it comes to genetics and other things, FTL, they seem very similar. So they rival it, but they utilize technology that's more as well in keeping with human tech, where they seem to move in a lot more in suspended animation and other things. Whereas, although we do see the Yautja do that as well, we've also seen the Yautja utilize portal technology that allows them to jump across space. So it's a little hard to say. We don't exactly know how widespread or common that technology is or how widely it's used. Is it military restricted? It's hard to say. We also don't know for a fact they don't have it. But I never seen them use it, so they don't. Their ships utilize some kind of in-space FTL similar to humans. Nothing like that the Yautja use. Now, I am going to disregard game lore and comic book lore because, again, it gets too complicated. But that, in a nutshell, is what we know about the Engineers. What do we know about the Predators, the Yautja? Well, again, they're bipedal and humanoid. We do know that some of them, and I'm going to say some of them, because I don't think it's a norm in their society. This was lore introduced in The Predator. I am sorry, that is a terrible film and I hate this lore. They use genetic material from races that they attack to enhance themselves. Being also someone that is autistic, autism, not a superpower, I just can't read emotions very well and I'm a little bit socially awkward. I also don't like people. Hence this. I also have ADHD. I have many things. But it is not a superpower. It is a goddamn hindrance most of the damn time. And kind of slows you down sometimes. It is not a superpower, but it is also not something that makes you particularly special or different to other people. You're just a little socially awkward. And it doesn't make you a chess grandmaster. It doesn't make you really, really good at very certain select things. It's not evolution, it's just mutation. It's one different aberrant strain of the way human neurology works. Nothing more. Get that in your head, Hollywood. It is not a superpower, and that's coming from someone who is autistic. Doesn't make me special. It does make me a little different. And I'm okay with that, because it's normal, as far as normal ever goes. Now, there is a thing in Yautja law known as a bad blood. Now, I have rationalized what the Predator was trying to say is that these are bad bloods. It's the same with the Predator and Predators. They're either a subspecies who have mutated themselves away from the original. And my feeling was the Predators in Predators and the giant Uber Predator in The Predator were bad bloods. Genetically modified, fine, because bad bloods would do that. Bad bloods have no honor. They hunt in packs, they do anything to win, they'll cheat, they don't care, they'll even kill their own kind. They're criminals, outcasts, and dishonored. They are not the good guys in Yautja society. They do exist, but they are enemies. Now we see that in Predators, that a standard baseline Yautja considers them an enemy and vice versa, and have been defeated by one. So we do also can extrapolate from this that perhaps the Bad Bloods represent a criminal element or perhaps a sectarian nature to Yautja culture, tribal. Perhaps they have different nation states or tribal states. It could be they're unified. We do have indications that they have a sort of leadership of some kind, a sort of elder class. But whether or not this is representative of all other people, we also don't know for a fact that all Yautja are hunters. Where are the bartenders? Where's the blacksmiths? Where are the engineers? The scientists, the doctors, the lawyers? I mean, they're evil. So, where are they? Gotta have them, right? So we don't know that these aren't just weekend hunters. They're probably not. They're probably a culture of hunters. Let's assume they are for the sake of this video. That gives them an automatic advantage over the engineers. They are talking about a culture that constantly prepares itself for fighting. Very individualistically, but they are warriors, constantly looking for a fight, constantly sharpening and honing their skills. Even the Bad Bloods. Now, assuming the Bad Bloods wouldn't get involved because they're, criminals, that's like asking the mafia to go and fight the Germans during the Second World War. Probably not going to do it. Maybe they're not going to stand in your way, they're not going to hinder you, but they're not actually going to really help. So my retconning, my rationalization in my own head is that those predators that we saw in those movies were Bad Bloods. They were the criminals, they were the bad guys. A normal Yautja would not want to taint itself with genetically modified human DNA or other such sources to give itself an advantage, because that would be dishonorable. We always see that the predators try to level the playing field. If they're going up against a particularly dangerous enemy like a xenomorph, they wear armor, more advanced weapons. Going up against humans, they don't even bother with armor. They have the advantage they need to have, but they don't go too far. Now, of course, in war, rules change. You want to win, so they're going to break out the armor, the best weapons, and everything. So, who goes in a fight with these two? Who wins? Who comes out on top? Now, going off technology, the Yautja do seem to have a lot more focus on straightforward fighting. Certainly when it comes to stealth technology, they're more advanced. There's no indication that the engineers even have it. So they probably don't. So we're going to assume they don't. Now, to level some of the playing fields here, neither side seem to have much in the way of an advantage well, they do have an advantage with FDL, with a lot of their technology. We've got to assume that in order to be able to hurt each other, their weapons can actually hurt each other. Everything else, their population, fleet density, all remain the same. So on that, what do we know about their capabilities? The engineers seem to be pretty straightforward. We've only seen realistically a couple of designs of their ships. One crashed on LV-426 and another one crashed, on the Prometheus planet. They're basically the same design. We don't know if these are research vessels or warships. They seem to be research vessels. Assume they're combat capable. So they're probably armed, but with what? It's hard to say because we simply haven't seen what they can do. But they must have some kind of energy weapons of some kind, so go with that. And for the sake of argument, they're going to be matching. We've not seen them utilize shield technology, so they don't have it. So they're going to rely on hull density and strength to absorb impacts from the Yautja, who are seen to have weapons that can fire from orbit, bore through ice, destroy human vessels in just a handful of shots, and they mostly seem to utilize plasma-based weaponry. The Yautja also have their lovely space portal technology, and we have seen quite a diversity of ships, from small transport vessels that the first one used to come back in the 1980s, as well as earlier even than that, to much larger vessels that can carry a large amount of the clan on board. These larger warships are huge and dwarf human vessels, and very likely at least rival the bigger engineer ships. So that's pretty much it. The only advantage I see the Yautja actually directly have, aside from their stealth tech, is their propulsion, and they have shields. So let's do the scenario. They get into a fight, probably over control of territory around Earth. Humans not involved. The engineers, from what we can tell, and again this is what we can tell, there aren't many of them. We do know that at least one colony was wiped out by the android David, and there are likely other colonies out there, and they likely have a home world out there, so there are many more of them. Their technology is very advanced, and I'm going to say as a baseline it's probably more advanced than Yautja tech, but it's not geared towards direct warfare. The Yautja have an advantage in propulsion, shielding, and the fact that they're much more militant and more aggressive. But the engineers are very dispassionate and callous towards their enemies. They will be willing to utilize the black goo and any other weapon they choose to feel throwing at them. Much more so a dishonorable type of warfare from a Yautja point of view. It's also likely that they will be able to create mutant organisms like xenomorphs and other such things to fight them, but we do know the Yautja are used to dealing with such things, so would know how to fight xenomorphs. Even if they don't always win, they know how. The Yautja are also seen to have a much larger population. We see huge cities on their world, and we see many of them. And single Yautja is generally a very effective combatant capable of taking on multiple enemies thanks to its guerrilla-style warfare. But in a pitched war, I don't think that's going to give them any advantage. They're going to have to fight this a bit more straight to engage with the engineers more directly. The engineers are not going to be as used to asymmetric warfare, is my feeling, and are going to simply try and hit them hard and fast wherever they can. The Yautja, with their portal technology, can be able to jump in, fight, but their desire to fight the engineers head on will probably become a disadvantage. Yes, they'll engage their ships, but they'll land on the ground. They won't just bombard the planets. And because of the engineers' massive superiority in physicality and their callousness, they would likely burn an entire planet just to get rid of a single or small group of Yautja. They will do so. They will also be very likely willing to work with the Bad Bloods and undermine the Yautja society from within. They'll empower them. They'll let them have their genetic technology to enhance themselves, make themselves stronger, and have them help fight the Yautja, forcing the Yautja to fight an internal enemy as well as an external. So suddenly, despite their shields and their better weaponry and tactics, the Yautja are actually suddenly finding that their straight up fighting with the engineers doesn't work. They're dealing with the Bad Bloods on one side, which are causing them a lot of problems at home, and right in front of them they've got an enemy that, yeah, they can run rings around them, and in spatial combat I bet they can beat them, but the Yautja keep trying to fight them head on, and their cultural imperative to be honorable and fight them in this way keeps interfering in basically achieving a straight, quick victory, resulting in giving the engineers an opportunity, despite their probable fewer numbers of ships and slower propulsion, an opportunity to actually get in and do some damage. It's also plausible that they would try to steal or adapt technology given to them by the Bad Bloods, who'd be more than willing to hand it over as long as they were getting something in return. And with the genetic technology of the engineers being up for grabs, my guess would be the Bad Bloods going to be very interested in that. So who's coming out on top in this conflict? Because it's going to be a battle over who controls the territory for Earth and other worlds of interest. The engineers have either created those plants and don't want the Yautja hunting them, or whatever the reason is, they've run into each other. They don't like each other. It doesn't matter. The other factions, they're staying out of it. Let's pretend humans are either unaware of it or just not interested in staying out of it. The engineers are going to be hitting them brutal. They're going to be hitting them savage. They don't care about casualties, losses of their own or theirs. They're just in it to win. And that kind of savagery, despite the Yautja's seeming tactical capabilities, I think is going to give the engineers the edge. Even though I think the Yautja probably outnumber them. The Yautja are much wider spread out, but their propulsion technology would allow them to coalesce very quickly, so I don't think that's a big problem. They'd come together and they would fight as a single harmonious unit, aside from the Bad Bloods, quite easily. The engineers are already united as far as we know, and although their ships are slower and probably less tactically orientated, we don't know really how many ships they've got. So I can't really say who can endure the bigger losses, but my guess would be the engineers would be able to inflict those losses on the Yautja when they get a chance more brutally and more effectively, because the Yautja's desire to fight this honorable style of war would hinder them. And by the time they wrap their heads around, we just got to kill the engineers. We just got to bombard them from orbit, throw down a few xenomorph queens to take care of them or something. We can't keep going down and fighting them hand to hand. We can't board their ships and fight them hand to hand, because they literally can rip our arms and legs off, because they're so much more physically powerful than we are. And that is comic book lore, even though I am mostly ignoring storylines where they go head to head in the comic books. So my feeling is the engineers are going to come out on top, despite what I think would be a smaller population and smaller fleet. Their sheer ruthlessness and uncaring nature and willingness to probably incur huge casualties would see them come out on top. The Yautja's unflinching resolve would see them keep throwing themselves onto the sword to try and win, but they just keep dying. And eventually, in this war of attrition, I think the engineers are going to win, but they're going to pay a very heavy price to do so. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Did you put all your money on the engineers winning, or did you think, nah, the Yautja, they're superior, they're great warriors, they're great fighters? They are. The engineers, there's no evidence that their entire society are fighters, so why would they win? My guess, because they can rally a full industry behind them, more so than the Yautja. They can sustain a more prolonged conflict than the Yautja could, because they're much more individualistic, whereas the engineers fight probably more like humans, but with much more advanced technology. And that ruthlessness combined with sheer will would probably, to my opinion, have them come out on top. But again, that is just my opinion. Let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And we're now at the end of it, so hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.